You know, when you come to a place the first time, you get up and speak, you have no idea where those words are going to go. But then you come a second time and you start to think to yourself, wait, I remember that kid, and I remember him a year or two ago, and his face already says the success. I can see in him that the guy that's walking out of this place is not the same guy that walked in. And that, to me, gives a chizuk to want to come back. To want to come back, to look you guys in the face again. To want to see, hey, what happened to that kid? What happened to that guy a year ago, 2 years ago, that when we sat over the tzitzis story, and I saw that literally he was levitating with me, and I was with him sink, breath by breath, emotion by emotion, as the speech went on. And then at the end, the kid walks over and says, thank you, Rabbi. Man, I enjoyed that. And then a year later, you come back and say, I want to see how much you really enjoyed it. Let me look at you today, a year later. That's why I keep coming back. I keep coming back because Rabbi Heller and myself go back many, many good years. We're what you call boyhood friends. And I cherish those boyhood friends. I grew up with the Wallerstein family. And I say that with a tremendous pride. Many places all over the world that I go to speak, I tell them that I grew up with the Wallerstein family. And like this, you have the success. I never had the opportunity to say this barabim, but Rabbi Wallerstein is here himself. And I could say that from your age and on, the years that made me grow probably the most were the years under his guidance. And what he did... what he did for us, not just as ball players, but what he did for us as future influencers in Klal Yisrael is something that till today, I myself am trying to give over to my own kid, my own son, my own guys, my own students. And over the years, I myself became a head counselor in many camps. And every step of the way, I asked myself, what would Rabbi Wallerstein do in this type of situation? How would he break out color war now? How would he give over the final scores? Yeah. How would he pull this one off now? How would he make that game so close that it would look like it came down to the last second and there's only one shot left? And how did every game end up that way? That was a koach, a talent, Rebbe, that I got from you. Yeah, that's exactly, that was the koach. Hashem should give you arichas yamim v'shanim. To have the koachas to continue to do for Klal Yisrael what you did for me. You see, ever since this COVID started, and Klal Yisrael was put into position where we had to go into quarantine, many of us found our learning, our davening, it was something that now I had to go out and fight for. But I learned over the years that the day you found something to go out and fight for is the day you found yourself. The day you find something to die for is the day you begin to really live. Because now you have purpose. You see, when things come easy, and it's a walk in the park, so suddenly we start to feel like, I don't appreciate really what I have. But the minute we no longer have it, and the minute it's get taken away, is the minute I start to appreciate what I did not appreciate till now. I found something to fight for. Guys, listen to me. We're reading in these parashiyot about the fact that the brothers of Yosef are coming down to Mitzrayim. And now Yaakov Avinu was finally told that his son Yosef HaTzadik is alive. Od Yosef Chai. Yaakov Avinu now decides he's going to come down to Egypt. Who does he send down ahead of everybody else? He sends down his son Yehuda. What does he tell Yehuda to do? Says Rashi, he sent Yehuda down to Egypt ahead of everybody else so that he'll set up a yeshiva. He'll set up a yeshiva in Goshen. Guys, why did he send Yehuda to start the yeshiva? Why didn't he send Levi? Levi later on is going to be the one that's going to be learning for the next 200 some odd years in Mitzrayim while everybody else is going to be working. He should be the one to open the yeshiva. Send Reuven. Reuven's the Bechar. Let him be the one to open yeshiva. He has responsibility on his shoulder constantly. Why did Yaakov Avinu send Yehuda? Says Reb Shmuel Birnbaum, Zechet Tzadik Libracha. Says Reb Shmuel, because if you want to build Torah, you got to be a gibor. Because the minute you step into the realm of wanting to taste the sweetness and the love of learning is the minute that you started a life's pursuit and a fight against the Yetzer Hara. You see, the Yetzer Hara will let you do chesed. The Yetzer Hara will allow you to daven at times. But when it comes to learning, that's his kryptonite. He says, do whatever you want. Avram Avinu, the Yetzer Hara didn't give him such a hard time after the Akedah. Avram Avinu, the Torah says, at the end of his life, he had a seva tava. He had a good end of a life. Because Avram Avinu was chesed. Chesed, said the Yetzer Hara, I can deal with it. Yitzchak Avinu, after the Akedah, he was tefillah. He didn't give him that difficult of a time. But gentlemen, know this. Yaakov Avinu, every minute of his life, there was another challenge. Because Yaakov Avinu stood for Torah. And if you want to build Torah, you got to get ready for the fight. Do you know how you build the yeshiva, said Rav Shmuel Birnbaum? You don't send a Bechar. You don't even send a Levi. You know who you have to send? You have to send an Ari. You have to send a lion. You have to send a Gibor. Because to build Torah is a war. It's a fight. And only the special few, and only the good, the strong, and the elite are the ones that become great in this area of the greatest gift of Klal Yisrael. And that's the Torah itself. I came here today to teach you how to be young lions. To teach you why I should want to learn. You know, I just got a phone call from a guy in Israel. A kid that I myself sent only a few months ago to Eretz Yisrael. And he said to me, Rabbi, I'm here in Israel. The whole place is on lockdown. But I'm trying my best to really make this year count. And they're pushing me for first Seder, second Seder, third Seder. What is my mission? What's my game plan? How do I make this work? Gentlemen, do you want to make things work in a way that you'll feel great about yourself? In a way that you'll feel that you have purpose and meaning in life? Before we step up to the Rebbe and ask him how long I need to learn, ask your Rebbe, could you show me how to make learning enjoyable? I want to love it. I don't want to break my teeth anymore in Aramaic. I want to be able to enjoy it. I want to be able to feel it. I want to be emotionally attached to the Gemara. And I know that sounds a little bit weird. Emotionally attached to a Gemara? You mean to say, Rabbi, that this thing could actually be enjoyable? You mean to say that one day I'll be able to open up a Gemara and start to read the lines of the Gemara and it'll resonate with me and it'll be so enjoyable that I won't want to stop? That could actually be a reality by me? Yes. If you're ready to be Yehuda, you'll open up the Torah in your world. But you got to be ready to fight for it. Are you ready to fight for your learning? want it. Because if you want it, I know you guys. I've seen kids that when they want something, they use their resources and they're ready to fight for it. And they go out like a Yehuda, like a lion, like a king, and they go out to conquer. What is your attitude when it comes to learning? If it's something that's a burden to you, then my friend, we're going to have to find the enjoyment. I want to tell you a story that turned my life around, especially when it came to the area of learning. Gentlemen, open your hearts. If you spaced out until this point, it's good. But now space in. Because now I need you to hear this story. Okay? We got past the Torah part of the speech, guys. So we're in the clear now. Yo, bro, in the back. We're good. We're good. No, not you. I'm talking about the handsome kid next to you. We're good. We're good. But now I want to kick into the story. So gentlemen, you with me? Here we go. Years ago, I was learning in Eretz Yisrael, and I was there for the first year. And it turns out that at that particular time, my father was going through some financial difficulties. My father worked for Blue Cross Blue Shield for many, many years. And then one day he walks into his office and he sees on his desk, there's a pink slip. And his entire division was laid off. Here's a guy that worked for the company for over 25 years. And one day, mamash kacha, one day he walks into his office and he was the manager of the division. You would expect that, the chashubi guys, the chashuva guys, at least their position is no such thing. Hashem says, what happens today and what you have tomorrow, and it's only the Borei Olam that decides. He walked into his office, and there it was. His entire division was laid off. So he's out of a job. Now, I don't know about you guys, but once upon a time, there was a generation that were very, very protective over their fathers. I come from that generation. It was very hard for us to ask our parents for certain things that we knew that they couldn't deliver. You remember those days? We were merachim on our parents. We actually went out and quietly did little side jobs just to be able to have enough, a few dollars, to buy that ticket for great adventures when it comes Chol HaMoed, because you didn't know if your parents were able to afford it at the time. I come from that generation. And now you understand why when I was in Israel that year, I needed money to live on. I needed money to do laundry. I needed money to go out with the boys every Thursday night to Massive, to whatever, to these, to different places to eat. I had no money. So I said to myself, if I call my father, he's in between jobs. He's not going to tell me no, because I'm his pride. But at the same time, I'm going to put him in a really bad position. So I said to myself, quietly, I'm going to go out and do a little job here and there. And then I'll do it after Zdarim. I'll do it Bein Zdarim. Maybe I'll do it the end of Second Seder. And it won't take off so much time from learning, but at least I'll make myself some money. I'll have money for my laundry. I'll have money for the time that the boys go out to restaurants. I'll have some money. So I'm thinking to myself, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So I start asking myself, what talents do I have? What can I make some money on? So I say to myself, and I hope you guys don't laugh at me for this, and I'm very embarrassed to say this, and I'm actually being recorded, so I got to be nuts for saying what I'm about to say right now. When I was a kid, I thought I was going to be the next Bruce Lee. Yeah. When I was a kid, I studied the martial arts. I thought I was going to be the next Jewish Bruce Lee. I really thought, ooh, Reb Pinchas, ay. I tell you.
I want everyone to say in public, I love everyone in Shushan, but my father did strike Canad at least once.
At
least once.
Are you joking? Many more than once. No, that's why I was smart. I always situated myself on his team. He created a new position for me with short center. Yeah. That was.
You caught the ball.
Huh?
You could play ball. Rabbi Duvi could play.
Oh, Baruch Hashem. At least I got that barab.
But the strike has nothing to do with my father.
Yeah. Was macht der Pinchas?
I'm very happy. I see my father.
Yeah, I'm Baruch Hashem. I'm very happy too. I'm not speaking as strong as I am because I'm standing in front of your father. But I'm warming up. I'm warming up. Chakeh, don't worry. It's coming. So guys, you with me? Everybody with me? Okay. Where are we up to? Bruce Lee. That's where we're up to. Exactly. So I really thought that as a young age, if I work hard enough, and if I train hard enough, I would actually be the next Jewish Bruce Lee. That's what I thought. And I trained day and night. I thought that whole world as a young kid from the 80s and the 90s, where I was going after, this martial arts, Bruce Lee and Chuck Norris and Steven Seagal, I thought to myself, wow, one day, I'm going to be this celebrity martial artist. And the craziest thing was that my next door neighbor, that the block I lived on, was an old Chinese Tai Chi master. So every morning I'd wake up, this guy is in the garden doing Tai Chi. Would you believe it? So I really thought I had a future to be, wow, one day. And because I trained over the years, and because at the age of 16 I got my black belt, I said to myself, this is what I'm going to do. I have a great idea. I came to Israel to learn. I came to Israel to get away from all the craziness. But now I need some money. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to Har Nof, which is a neighborhood in Israel that has many Americans. And Bein Hasdarim, I'm going to teach self-defense. I'm going to teach the martial arts. And I had the Teudah, I had everything. And I'm going to make a lot of money because I'm thinking to myself, if I charge each kid 50 shekel a month and I get 20 kids, that's 1,000 shekel. That's all I need. And like this, I'll be able to learn. So I made this cheshbon, I made this idea where, great, I'm going to learn and then I'll teach self-defense. I won't have to ask my father for any money. And like this, I'll be a self-made Talmud Chacham. At least that's what I thought. But then another side of me said, wait one second, Duvi. You came to Eretz Yisrael to get away from all the craziness. You came to Eretz Yisrael to get away from all the shtusim. You came from Eretz Yisrael to get away from the distractions. You came to Eretz Yisrael to get away from the bad friends. You came to Eretz Yisrael to get away from the martial arts and from that whole world that was absolute smoke and mirrors. And now you're going to go back into it? You sure that's where you want to go? This is your year of learning. Does learning work with other things? Other habits and hobbies and loves? Well, maybe Torah's like a wife. And there's no wife on the planet Earth that would be willing for anyone to have eyes on a second love. I didn't know what to do. I didn't want to bother my father. I was doing, guys, listen to me, I'm not joking with you. I was washing my Shabbos shirts in the yeshiva sink every Friday. I'm not joking. I didn't have a nickel. I was doing my own hand laundry. For an American kid, that's unheard of. I was in an Israeli yeshiva, so no one really realized. But it came to a point where I was in a major quandary, a question. What do I do? Maybe I should go out and teach the martial arts. Make a few dollars on the side. Like this, I'll be able to sit and learn. B'sheket u'b'shalva, with a quiet, clean head. I didn't know what to do. So I decided to do what we were always taught to do. Go to the Eibishter, go to the Bari Olam, go to Hashem, and ask Him. Now, I'm in Eretz Yisrael, I'm Yerushalayim. I'm in the right place to do this. So you know what I did? That Ben Azdarim, right after first Seder, I went down to Mea Sharim, and I jumped on the number 1 bus. The number 1 bus going to the Kotel. And my plan was, I'm going to go to the Kotel, I'm going to walk up to that amazing wall that when you touch and you put your hands on the stones, when you touch it, it touches you. It moves you, it takes you places. And you could feel that the tefillot, from this spot, I am standing at Sha'ar Hashamayim. I am standing at the door of Hashem's house. I'm going to go to the Kotel and I'm going to daven. Hashem, tancheni, yancheni b'ma'agle tzedek, l'man shemcha hagadol. Hashem, guide me. I'm coming to you, Nasa v'nishma. I'm coming to you with an open heart. I want to do the right thing. I want to become something big in Torah one day. I want to become a rabbi one day. I want to teach Torah to Klal Yisrael one day. But can I do it while I'm still in the martial arts? While I'm still doing other things on the side? Or maybe the Torah demands your full heart, your full love, your full energy. Yancheni. Open my eyes and show me the real mahalach, the real way. Take my hand, Nasa v'nishma, and lead me to the emes. I want to know the truth. So I came down to Mea Sharim, and I waited for the number 1 bus. Number 1 bus pulls up, it was empty. There was nobody on the bus. So I jump onto the bus, and I go all the way to the back, and I'm sitting there alone, empty bus. 2 stops later, guys, this big 400-pound guy comes on the bus. And I am telling you, did you ever see when the buses lower the front step down? You remember that? So that this guy came on like Hulk Hogan. You had to see the size of this guy. He comes on the bus. Now the bus is empty. And I'm looking at this guy from the back of the bus. And I'm saying to myself, wow, that's a big guy. You know, he had the camera hanging around his neck. He was wearing the members only jacket. He had the Dockers with no socks. And he basically was one of those American tourists that walked around Israel saying, with a sign on their back, hey, I'm an American. Could somebody rip me off? So here's the guy, comes on the bus, big guy, with the camera. And he walks on, and I'm saying to myself, wow, look at this guy. And he starts making his way to the back of the bus. And I'm saying, the whole bus is empty. Why is he coming to the back of the bus? There's just me in the back of the bus. And as he gets closer, I start realizing, wait 1 second. I'm sitting on a 2-seater. He comes right up to where I'm sitting. I'm talking the whole bus is empty. He comes right up to the 2-seater that I'm sitting on. He turns around, and then he backs up the rig. And he comes, boom! And my whole side of the chair goes up and down. And I'm sandwiched between him and the wall. And he looks at me and smiles and he says, you from here? And I said, yeah. He says, you an American? And I'm looking at him like, yeah. How did you know? I mean, I could pass for an Israeli sometimes. And he says to me, what are you doing here in Israel? I said, I'm here learning in Yeshiva. He said, really? I said, yeah. He looks at me, and now that he has a captivated audience, I ain't going nowhere. He looks at me straight in the eye and he says to me, I want to tell you something. You're here in Yeshiva, right? You're learning. Whatever you do, don't stop learning. I looked at this guy like, what'd you say, bro? What did you just say? He says, you heard me. Use every minute you have. Grab it with 2 hands. Don't waste a minute. And learn and learn and learn. And don't stop. And I'm looking at him like, that was the last thing in the world that I expected this guy to tell me. And gentlemen, I want to tell you something. I'm going light on the details. But if you would have seen the size of this guy, if you would have seen the way he came off, to expect that out of him was like, where to where? He looks at me and he says, you want to hear a story, he tells me? Little did I know that the story he's about to tell me, I'm going to end up telling over maybe 100 times one day. He says, I want to tell you my story. He says, when I was a young kid, he said I was only 16. And he says, I was someplace in Czechoslovakia, someplace in Europe, outside of Russia. He says at that time, the anti-Semitism that was going on in his city, in his little town, was horrible. He says his dad came to him one day and told him, listen, I put all my money together and I'm buying you a ticket. I'm sending you to the United States. We have an uncle that lives in the Lower East Side in New York. I'm going to send you to America because over there in America, Judaism is starting to thrive. I want you to go to a yeshiva there. I want you to become something great there. Over here in Europe, I see already things are going really bad. And this is not the place where Judaism is going to thrive. But in America, things are fresh. They're starting out. The community is young. You'll see that that's going to be the future for Klal Yisrael. I want to send you to your uncle in America. You'll go to yeshiva there. You'll become something great. Because all I want is for my son to become a real Ben Torah, a real Talmid Chacham. He says, I turned to my dad. I said, Dad, I don't want to take all your money. I know you've been kind of saving up this money for the longest time. He says, don't worry. For me, this is worthwhile. If my son will one day become a Talmid Chacham, it's worth it, the entire sacrifice. Take all the money I got, buy a ticket, you're on the next ship out to the United States. As long as I know you're going to the Lower East Side, you're going to America, the land that flows milk and money. You'll see. Over there you'll succeed. Just promise me you're going to go to a yeshiva. Promise me you're going to become something great. Send me letters. Tell me about your learning. Tell me about your growth. Like this, it'll keep me going. It'll give me chizuk. There is nothing in the world, gentlemen, look at these eyes. There is nothing in the world that gives a father a greater feeling of purpose and good, knowing that he has a son that tasted the sweetness of Torah and sees that he's thriving and enjoying and becoming something beautiful and learning. Because when you find that, you found life. He told his son, make me a promise. You're going to go to America. You're going to go to the yeshiva. It was worth the sacrifice. I'm sending you off at the end of the week. He says, Dad, okay. I'll go for you. He turns to me and he says, you don't know what it meant to me. Me and my father were very close. And to leave him was very tough. But if it meant that much to him, it means that much to me. He says at the end of that week, he packed up everything with one suitcase. And his father, his mother, his brothers and sisters, they all walk him out to the port. And he gets on this big ship. He says, I'm on the ship. And I wave goodbye to everybody. And I tell my dad, I'm not going to let him down. I'm not going to let him down. The ship pulls out, and we're at sea for about a week. He says, I got so seasick. I was throwing up every day. And you won't believe, he tells me, how happy I was when the captain announces that the ship is going to make one stop on the way to the United States, to New York. And we ended up stopping in the port of Romania. And when I heard that this was going to be a one-day stop, I was happy to get off that boat, that ship, for anything. He says, I got off the ship, and the captain announced, tomorrow at noon, the ship is leaving. If you're on the ship, you're with us. If you don't make it, you don't make it. We're not waiting for anybody. He says, I knew the next day by noon, I had to be on that ship. He says, that afternoon, he says, I'm a young boy, 16, 17 years old. I'm walking up and down the port. I'm trying to figure out, what do I do? I have nobody with me, no family. I'm on my own. He says that evening, he decided he's going to stay by the port. Like this, the next day, he won't miss the ship leaving. He says, as he's walking up and down the port, he tells me that at the end of the port, he heard yelling and screaming. It sounded like cheering. So he goes to the end of the port and he sees there's a bar. And he tells me, I walk into the bar. I look around. Half of the guys there were drunk. But in the back of the bar, there was a whole crew of guys in a circle. And they were yelling and cheering and screaming. And every now and then, I saw papers flying in the air. And guys were handing each other money back and forth. And I'm thinking to myself, what is going on in the back of the bar? What are they doing back there? So he says, I made my way to the back of the bar because I was a really curious kid. And I looked over the shoulders of one of these guys. And he says, you know, I was a big kid. Even as a kid, I looked older, bigger than I really was. He says, I look over the shoulder of one of these guys, and I see in the middle of this circle, there are two guys that are slugging it out together. And they are beating each other's heads in. I mean, this wasn't a boxing match. This was a knockout match. And every time you had a guy that would stand in the middle and he would challenge the champion or whoever the guy was that kept winning. And he says everybody would make bets and they would bet who's going to win and who's going to lose. And he says at the end, about 2 to 3 minutes, there was always somebody knocked out on the floor and the other guy, the champion, with his hands up in the air. He says, wow, I was watching this 10, 15 minutes. And there was a guy there who was really, really powerful. He was knocking out one guy after the next, after the next. And I was watching this. And the amount of money that was going back and forth was crazy. He says, suddenly, as I squeezed myself in the circle of guys, he says, I don't know how this happened, but I feel a pair of hands on my back, and somebody pushes me in the middle of the circle. And I'm like, whoa, 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 guys. And I try to get out of the circle. I try to go back into the circle of men. And as I go back, they push me in. And then I run to the other side of the circle. They push me in. I try to go they push me in. They're not letting me back out of the circle. And then it hit me. Oh boy, how did this happen? I'm the next guy up for bid. I turn around and I look at this big monster of a guy. This guy's a killer. I'm just a 16-year-old kid. How did I end up here in this circle? Get me out of here. I'm supposed to be on my way to New York. I'm supposed to be on my way to Yeshiva. If my dad would see me now, here, in this position, at this moment, I don't think he would make it. And honestly, I don't think I'm going to make it. He looks at the size of this killer, this guy. And he says, I didn't know what to do. He said, I'm just a kid. I was big, I was strong. But I'm not a fighter like this guy. So he says, so you know what I did, he tells me? He says, I started running around in circles just to get away from this killer. And as I'm running away from the guy, this big guy starts chasing me. It looked like a guy trying to catch a chicken. And I'm running back and forth, and he's running back and forth, and he's trying to corner me in the middle at the ends of this circle, till finally I tripped. And he was chasing behind me. And he tripped right over me and landed on his head. And at that minute, he was stunned. I said, oh my God, this is my chance. I jumped up on top of the guy, and I started pounding him. Just so that he doesn't get up and kill me. He says, I knocked him out. And at that minute, you're not going to believe. He turns to me, he says to me, you're not going to believe what they did at that minute. At that minute, the whole circle of guys jump in the middle, they grab me, they raise me up on their shoulders, and they start screaming in Romanian, we have a new champion. We have a new champion. Somebody beat the champion. We have a new champion. And he says, I looked around like, is this really happening? This is ridiculous. How did I end up with this? And one guy walks up to me and hands me a wad of bills and puts it in my hand. And he says, here you go, champion. Now let's see what you can do on your next fight. I said, next fight? What next fight? I'm out of here. My ship is leaving tomorrow. I'm no fight, no nothing. He said, no. Now you're champion. You have to defend your title. You can't leave. He says, I didn't know what to do. But then when I looked down at the money that they put in my hand, my dad didn't make that money in a year. And I just made it in 3 minutes. I said to myself, maybe just for tonight, I'll try this. Just for tonight. It's the Yitzchak. Just give me an inch. Just for tonight. One time. It won't go on. I'll make sure to stop it. He says, I told myself just tonight. And he says, that night, he fought one guy after the other guy, after the next guy. And this kid knocked out every single contender. And he says, I made more money that night than I've ever seen the numbers of money in my life from the poor little town that I came from someplace at the edge of Russia. He says to himself, wow. He says, that night I walked out at a bar at 3 a.m. with so much money. I said to myself, shh, this is crazy, If I stick around and do this for a week, do you know how much I'll make? I'll have enough money to send back to my dad. I'll be able to buy tickets for my whole family to come to America. Not just me. And like this, I won't be alone. I'm going to do my dad a favor. I know. Okay, I know what you're thinking. My dad sent me to go to Yeshiva in America. And I know he wants me to become a Talmid Chacham. And I know that he wants me to be a great benter. But listen, come on, how many opportunities do you get like this? So I'll stay for a week. I'll make a killing. I'll send the money back to my dad in Russia. Buy him the family tickets, because now, I'm the rich man in the family now. I'm the rich guy. I'm the rich son. Everybody wants to be the rich son. I'm doing it for my family, Rabbi, not for me. Oh, God forbid. I'm doing it for my family. And meanwhile, what does your family want? They want you to become something great in learning. Because there's a lot bigger things out there than money. You get older and you find that out the hard way. And he says to me that night, he decided he's not going on the ship the next day. And sure enough, 12 noon came, the ship left to the United States, and he says to me, I wasn't on it. But that night, I was on my game. That night, I went back to the bar again. I said, guys, I stayed for an extra week. When they heard that, they took me, they raised me up, the champion's here. They brought me to the back. They brought one guy, and I knocked him out. They brought me another, I knocked him out. They brought me another guy out. Guys, if you would have seen the size of this guy, you would understand that for this guy to knock somebody out, He practically knocked me out. I was stuck there. I was hardly breathing between the window and this guy. I mean, he was sitting half on me. Okay. He says he was there for over a year and a half. 1 week led to another week, which led to another week, which led to a month, which led to 3 months, which led to 6 months, which led to a year. He says at that time, I was making so much money, but I wasn't really from anymore. He says, I stopped keeping Shabbos because over there in Romania, there was no Jews. No one kept Shabbos. I stopped keeping kosher because there in Romania, there was no one keeping kosher. There was no from people. He says, I even ended up, chas v'shalom, lo aleinu v'lo alechem. He says he ended up meeting a Goyish girl. He says, but I was the champion. I was the champion. They called him the Romanian bulldog. And in Romania, he was known as this phantom Jewish kid that came out of nowhere with lightning fists. And boy, did he become rich. He says after a year and a half of being this great champion, he says one night, some young kid comes walking into the bar. And this kid walks up to the back, just like I did a year and a half earlier. And he peeks over the shoulder of the circle of men, cheering and yelling and screaming. And sure enough, they did to him what they did to me. They grabbed him without him even knowing, and they pushed him into the middle. And there I see this young kid looking right at me. And this kid was just a drop quicker than me. And before I knew it, the kid was just defending himself the way I tried to just defend myself on my first fight. And he ended up hitting me so hard just to get out of that circle that I saw stars. And I was knocked out. And he says, in the back of my mind, I heard the same cheering, yelling, and screaming from a year and a half ago. But this time it wasn't me on the top of their shoulders. It was some other kid, a little bit younger and a little bit faster. And I heard them screaming, we have a new champion! He beat the Romanian bulldog! And I knew that moment I was more than beat. I was done. I was done. He says, that night, with a bruised ego and with the biggest loss, my first and last fight, my biggest loss, I went back home, and he says, I told the girl, I'm going to America. I don't belong here. I got to get back to Yeshiva. He says to me, but how am I going to go to Yeshiva now? He tells me, listen to the way the Yitzchak works. Unbelievable. How am I going to Yeshiva now? I didn't keep Shabbos in a year. I haven't been eating kosher. How am I going to go to Yeshiva? He says, the next day, I bought 2 tickets. And me and this Goyish girl went to the United States. And we came into the Lower East Side. And I contacted my uncle. And my uncle said, where are you? For a year and a half, your father was sending me letters looking for you. Where is my son? Is he in yeshiva? Is he learning? How's he doing? Which Masech is he learning? Who's his Rebbe? What's the name of the yeshiva? Where is my son? And I've been making excuses and excuses. I didn't bump into him yet. I'm still looking for him. I didn't say, where are you? What happened to you? He asked me. My uncle was going crazy on me. And I didn't know what to answer. I didn't know what to say. I said, I just had a bad delay. I had a bad delay. But now I'm back to where I'm supposed to be. Now I'm back. He says, it's good you're back. Because you're not going to believe this. Your father got so worried that he didn't hear from you in a year and a half. Your father bought a ticket. And he's coming here to the United States. And he's going to be here next week. He said, what? Oy vey. My father's going to see me like this? Forget it. He's not going to know what to do with himself. I'm not going to know what to do with myself. I was supposed to be learning. I was supposed to be in yeshiva. I was supposed to be doing. Oy, look at me now. Look at me now. Look at me now. He turns to me and he says, the next week his father came on the boat right up to Lady Liberty, Lower East Side. And he says, I went out to greet my father. And he says, I'm standing there. And I see my father on the front of the boat. And I start screaming, Tate! Tate! He says, my father comes off the boat. And he walks right by me. And he doesn't even recognize me as his son. And I said, Tate! Tate! It's me! It's Yankala! Whatever his name was, I don't remember what it is. Yassel, I think it was. It was Yassala! He says, it's me, it's Yassel! And he says, my father turns around and looks at me and says, Du bist nicht, you're not my Yassel. My Yassel is a Talmud Chacham. Wer bist du? He says, Tatel, it's me. It's Yassel. And he says, my father takes a second look. And then he takes another look. And he says, Oy vey, oy vey. What happened to you, Yassel? What happened to you, Yassel? I sent you almost 2 years ago. I thought you'd be already. What happened? You don't even look. He says, Tata, I didn't go to yeshiva. I did everything that I shouldn't have done. I'm sorry. He says, I took my father home. And he says, wait till he saw who was at home with me. Gewalt. He says, that Friday night, I tried to make it as if I'm going to show my father that no. Friday night, I went to the shul with my father for the first time. This is the first time I saw the inside of a shul for over a year and a half. And he says, right after davening was over, me and my father is walking home through the Lower East Side. And as we're going home, 3 guys jump out of an alleyway to mug us. You don't mug the Romanian bulldog. You had to see this guy. He says, they jumped on me and my father. They pushed my father to the floor. They asked us for our money. We weren't carrying anything. It was Friday night. It was Shabbos. He says, I turned around. He says, it wouldn't take me more than 10 seconds. I knocked out all 3 guys. And then I turned back and my father was there. And I helped my father up off the floor. And I said, Tata, look. You see? You see? Abba, you see? This is why, min hashamayim, I was supposed to go and stop off in Romania and become the fighter and the this and that, so that today I'll be able to save your life. And he says, my father looked up at me and he said to me in Yiddish, I would rather have died right here knowing that my son is a Talmud Chacham. The Romanian bulldog looks at Duvi ben Shushan and he says to me, whatever you do, don't stop learning. Whatever you do, every minute, grab it. You'll never get this opportunity again. This is what's going to make you successful, to have purpose and direction later on in life. Whatever you do, don't let go of the love of your Rebbe and your learning. And with those words, guys, the number 1 bus pulled up to the kotel. And I was like, wow, this was a ridiculous story. This guy took me on a trip. Wow, Rebbeinu Shalom. He gets up from the chair, ba-broom, ba-broom. It was like a seesaw. He got up this side. And I'm stopped, and my head was like, wait 1 second. Right. He gets off, he says goodbye. I'm thinking to myself, Nachamal, why did I come to the kotel? Oh, yeah, I had a tremendous shayla. I wanted to daven. Should I go out and teach the martial arts, or should I just learn? I said to myself, wait 1 second. Eibishter, thank you. Eibishter, thank you. You gave me the answer before I even got to the stones. Eibishter, thank you. I promise you I will not let go of your learning. I promise you I will enjoy it, I will love it, I will learn it, and I will give the love to others. Abba, thank you, you gave me the answer. And I jumped off that number one bus. Guys, listen to this. I jumped off the number one bus and I said to myself, little does this guy know, the Romanian bulldog, little does he know how much of help he just gave me by giving over his life story. Little did he know why and where I was on my way to, and for what purpose, and for what clarity, and for what answers that I needed, the direction of my learning of my life. I ran out of the bus. I said, I got to thank this guy. He has no idea what he just did for me. So I run down the steps. I kind of make my way through the metal detector. Sorry, excuse me, coming through. Sorry. Made my way through. The soldiers, oy vey, were they upset. Slipped my way through that. It's like, I'm sorry, I got to catch up to a guy. I run up there and I'm looking. Now, a guy 400 pounds is not exactly a guy that vanishes into thin air. So I run up to the kotel. I run inside to the kotel. I run to the outside of the kotel. I run to the kotel plaza. I go to the back offices. I go to the shuk. I come back to the bus stop. I look in the front on the Levinson kotel, the private kotel. He's gone. The Romanian bulldog vanished in thin air. But the message was bigger than life itself. You want to build Torah, you got to be a fighter. You got to be a gibor. That's why he sent Yehuda, not any other brother. But if you want to taste what life really has to offer, if you want to enjoy life and taste what success means, then let's start not just learning, but let's start asking our Rebbes, Rebbe, show me how to make it enjoyable. Because whatever you do, take it with two hands. Make every minute count. And like the Romanian bulldog said to me, whatever you do, don't stop learning. Thank you for listening, guys.